Welcome to Ausfilm Creatives, a podcast about Australian creatives working behind the camera. My name is Peter Sylvester and I'm your host. Welcome back, listeners, and we'll continue part 2 of Mark Wareham's interview. So we'll continue to discuss Mystery Road, the TV series, and also Don't Tell, which is a feature film he shot, and talk about a little bit about the industry and what the future looks like for us. And on Mystery Road, just wanted to talk a little bit about the actual visual style that time lapse that you talked about with the ute. Like, it was an interesting, iconic image to me because obviously that was sort of like the key to the story in a way. Was that sort of the themes that you wanted to play with, like in a way? And Rachel with the symbolism of certain things in the story?
The thing that I really wanted to come away from the Kimberleys with is I wanted to be very clear to everyone that we shot in the Kimberleys. Now, you don't always have to shoot everything, because we shoot things here, like we've just been shooting clickbait in Melbourne that's meant to be in America. So that's by the by, you do that, and that works, you know? And you do insert shots in different places. But I was very conscious that I wanted to capture the feeling of being in the Kimberleys. Now, one of the things, the first night I arrived, because I hadn't been to Kununurra before, I stayed in it wasn't a motel, it was like a resort. And on the wall, there was a picture of a boab tree with astrophotography. There was a local photographer called Ben Brody who ended up being our drone pilot and assisted Murray on that. And he'd been look up Ben Brody, he's a pretty amazing character. But he'd done all this. They're mad up there about Astro, and they're mad about the Southern Cross, and they're mad about all this stuff. When I saw that, and when you go outside and you see this, you thought, because of the lack of pollution and where you are and all that stuff, the sky is just
it's phenomenal,
amazing. So we very much in the visual style. Rachel wanted it to be very earthy in color, that color of that orange earth, and she wanted to play more in the color palette of those earth tones and stuff. So that was in a sort of the color palette. But we very much wanted to have iconic images where. And a lot of the discussions about the time lapse. I mean, I don't know. Do you know much about doing Astro time lapse?
I've done my share of it and mucked around with it, but I'm not.
But you know that whole thing about because everyone says, you want to shoot on a full moon and all that.
Yeah.
Like, you got to shoot on a quarter moon.
Yeah, that's right.
To get the skies not bright, and when you get a bright sky, when you get a bright moon, you don't have a bright sky.
That's right.
And all that stuff. It starts to go daytime, and So so we were very conscious. So that the first piece of time lapse at the start was written. They wanted 2 days to think. But then what we did is we decided, instead of doing a title sequence on every subsequent episode, we decided to open every episode with a time lapse sequence that had something about that episode, rather than having a title sequence that had. So in a way, we traded out that money in the budget, and this becomes another thing. You end up what's the word? You end up you have to be. Everyone says, you just go and do what you like. Well, you don't really, because the problem is that you'll get to the point where you run out of money and you don't shoot the whole thing. So you've got to be a little bit practical about how you spend your day. So you do that horse trading with stuff. So we knew that we wanted to do each beginning of each sequence, and then because within those time-lapse sequences, there's live action shot stuff cut in between it. And so the trick was making sure that you got the density of the sky and the brightness. The biggest thing was doctoring the car to get the lights dim, that they didn't look too warm. So we put tiny globes in them, and that, just balancing exposure and all that stuff. But we tested the shit out of that before we shot it, and we worked it out. Like I even showed what them, with the iPhone, even took like little time lapse things around things just to get an idea of what the movement would be like, and so that we could work out how long time Rachel drew a little storyboards and stuff of, you know, the moon, the sun coming up over the horizon and stuff. And it's amazing how similar it is to the sequence. Graphic aerials, low light silhouettes of stuff that we took from the, and also his reference for that was, you know, No Country for Old Men, which was, you know, reference for that film.
Yeah, it was similar in
know,
ways.
He's sort of the master, isn't he, Roger Deakins? He's someone who never sort of puts a foot wrong. Yeah, so yeah, I really wanted to make sure, and this again was a reaction to doing stuff that where I'd done other things and I'd come back from it, and I hadn't felt that I captured. That was my making sure that I got that I came away there and I achieved what I set out to do. You know, which was that. So I was very, very careful that you always felt the background there. So I didn't always shoot everything wide open and do it all mushy. You know, I used a fair bit of stop as well in those. You know.
Yeah. It was always, the landscape was very always visible there, and you were quite aware of it, which was great. And you know, I mean, I don't know what your ratio of indoor to outdoor, but it seemed like mostly outdoor.
Yeah, we did have a bit of stuff, but luckily it was cut quite quickly. And again, transitionally, you know, we talked about transitions to get in and out of things, and the editor Deb Peart, she was up there and she was great, you know, because we were actually restructuring the story a bit as we went as well. And of course, you know, Judy Davis was unreal, you know, like great, but you know, she is so tiny and she's so white.
Yes.
And she's so white.
Yeah.
And so and Aaron just got darker and darker and darker. And you know, he's got a white hat on because that's what he had in the thing, and she's got a dark hat on, a dark outfit.
Yeah.
Not like, you know. So but you know, Judy also came to some scenes with completely, you know, they're not like, well, there's certain scenes in that thing that are not like they're written of. Judy would say on the day, and I was thinking that maybe I'm not here. I drive up and I look out of the car and I see them, and Rachel looks at me and says, she goes, "That's a great idea." She looks at me. Can you shoot that? I'm looking at the time going, yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, you can try it.
So jumping. And then we also knew that, you know, and we identified some of the things that were in the film. This was very basic. Some of those shots we'd also shot. We did a little pre-shoot of the Rodeo. I don't know if you remember the Rodeo scene.
Yep.
There was a whole. Well, that was a pre-shoot because it happened to be on. So I just shot that on a Blackmagic and a FS7.
Oh, yes.
The operator came up and we just went around and I shot with a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro, and which was great, you know.
Yeah.
Just ran around with that with a couple of my Longinos on the front, and just with no lighting, and it was great, you know. It was just something that we thought we put less is more, but we talked about sort of like the color schemes, and like even those lights there. I've got location shots of those colors, but they're sort of it. They're all and there's the time lapse.
Yeah. Yes.
And that was a test. Yeah. So we shot. We went actually shot a test of the car. So Ben went out there and we did that. So we didn't even. So you know, like it wasn't like happenstance. We actually took a car out there, put it there, took a shot of it, like, and tried to work out, and then said, "Okay, Murray, this is what we want you to do." And then he worked out the best time of day, so we knew the lights were too bright and you know?
Yeah. That's the trickery of Astro is, like, you know, when I do it, I don't have all the cool things like, I'll just dim all those lights so I can do the time lapse better. But so
I mean, you can also go and do stuff with you know, post later, but the thing is that we didn't want to
deal with that.
We wanted to get a similar pickup list. Anyway, so there you go. That was that was the response more to because everyone asked me what were you doing pre, and I said I was actually shooting. There's a shot in the opening. I don't know if you remember it too. There's a shot in the opening where it's a top-on shot, and there's a car going across, and there's like these big circles where someone's burnt else off. But Well, that shot, it was never shot. That was a shot I shot on. There's a couple of shots in it that I shot in pre
Yep.
on the drone, and I said, "Oh, here's the shot for you guys to go and reshoot it." Like I shot things, but because we never did it, mate goes, "Well, fuck, where's that shot?" And luckily, I found it.
Yeah, like you had it.
I kept it all.
Yeah.
And stills, I took my, I still use a stills camera, but I usually use Artemis most of the time as well.
Yeah.
I always do my I always use Artemis on location now. I've actually do a couple of things new I'm doing. I actually, my iPad, and I changed this over about a year ago, which was I use Scriptation. My scripts to go digital.
Yep.
Which is a script program that goes on your iPad and you can put notes in it.
Yeah.
And that way, when you update, they give you amendments. Your notes go across to the amendments, and you don't have to,
Oh yes, yeah.
I'm using that, and I use Artemis Pro. I've used it for years, but I really use it because it's just that way of saying to the director, look, come here, look at this. Is that what you saw?
Yeah.
Before you pull a camera out. I mean, I'll still pull my stills camera out and snap a whole lot of shots too,
Yeah.
And I still I've just got my old Canon 5D Mark III. I've just kept it, what I mean?
Yeah, I've got the same, yeah.
And I still use that, and I still like it, and I've got an R as well, but I just, we use a combination, but I'm really, the quality on the iPad Pro for what I can need to do is enough. So I just find that they're like the digital things I use. I don't need to make it much more than that. At least it is a good thing to work out your start and your ends and what your edges of frame. And if I park the unit over there, is that going to be shot?
Yeah.
And then other thing I've always been, like I don't go anywhere without taking a drone now.
Yeah. Okay.
I always carry one. Yeah, it's a recce tool, and
great.
so that I can plan. So I can again plan drone shoots. So because everything's all aerial, helicopter aerial shoots or whatever.
Yeah.
But I will look to see what's up there, so we don't go. Oh fuck, there's a power station or something.
Yeah.
And that came to me because I did a few years back. I did a music video in Greece, and with a director mate, and when we arrived, they said to us, "Oh, well, the videographers will be here tomorrow, and they can do B-roll for you." And I went like, "The what?" And they said the videographers, and these two guys turned up called Sam and Sam, two Sams, two Aussie guys in board shorts and t-shirts, good looking, in their 20s, late 20s, and they turned up with their backpacks, and their fucking out came their their A7R with some shitty old lens on the front, and they were like social media gurus, and I said to them, "Oh, you guys would be handy. How do I get in contact with you?" And they were GoPro ambassadors, and they, they were these really cool guys until there was no Wi-Fi, and man, these really cool fucking together on a guys fucking melted down when they couldn't get on the internet. Anyway, it was really interesting. So these guys travel the world. I was looking at their content, their Instagram. One guy's called Sam Evans, 5. Great. You look at his stuff, it's like brilliant. And the other guy's called Sam Erb. He's a ex-lifeguard. And anyway, and then we're up on the top of this hill, and he says, "Oh, do you guys want a drone shot of this?" And we go, "Fuck, that look cool, And zip, 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 zip. Pulls out his Phantom 3 at the time.
Yep.
Does this fucking drone stuff that we put in the thing, and we're just going, fuck. And I just came back from that, and then I was on a job, and we asked for a drone for this thing, and they turned around and said, "Oh, no, you can't fly a drone there because it's too near the airport."
Yeah.
Okay, we're staying there, and I'm standing director. I go, "Oh fuck, what a fuck! It would have been great to get this drone shot." And we hit a zzz, and we turn around, and on the cliff behind us was a whole pile of brides, all getting their wedding photos, and
Yep.
there is like fucking 4 or 5 drones, these little drones, and I went, "Fuck this! That's it. Because I'm just going to get out punched on this." And so on Mystery Road, I took a Phantom 4 Pro up there
Yep.
as a pre-production tool, but I can't tell you how many shots it'd be. We had an Inspire 2 as well,
Yeah.
which is the main stuff that Broady, but I can't tell you the amount of stuff that's on the Phantom. Like dropping the stone down, that one, that's with the Phantom. I did a lot of those overhead, a lot of things on prep. I don't know if you remember, there was a scene where there was all these cattle that looked like maggots, like from overhead.
Oh yeah, that was brilliant.
Something on
Yeah.
pre.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something in pre. We saw it come, and she goes, "Get your fucking drone up." So I crashed at 2 quite bad crashes there, and it taught me a lot about thing. I was talking to Torsten Derding, does some brilliant work. You know Torsten?
No.
Torsten, he's a great DP. He's shooting some drama now, but he shoots a lot of really good docos.
Okay.
And he was telling down the Kimberleys, he said, I have 3 drones because one of them's always getting rebuilt. So anyway, yeah, but I won't cut the drone guys out of it, but because I prefer to get
someone good,
better cameras and better people. But what it just means is if I see something that that's something that I've taken on board too,
Yeah. No, it's funny. That's the thing, that the beauty of today's technology, that we can cut in footage from these not so expensive equipment.
Well, also too, my Phantom 4, drones we were using, like say a year and a half before, with those GH4s and all that on it. And I can shoot way better stuff because I also have got I've got every ND under the sun, and I've got my thing tuned to the fucking Jesus. The way, and I tell people this is how I do it. And people always say to me, "Oh, you're a good drone pilot." I said, I don't know anything about piloting a drone, but I know how to shoot stuff. That's what the big difference is. So, and anyway, I watch these guys. So, that was a sort of change for me to realize that in the world that I was working in, that you needed to be able to mix this smaller technology with the bigger technology, And and like on that film, The Second, basically I shot that all with one camera with the Vericam and a set of Hook anamorphics. It's very little lighting, but in that we got, Brendan Isaac's out with his Phantom, the Inspire 2, and when he went off and shot a whole pile of establishes and stuff, interstitial stuff, and all of a sudden your whole second unit can be a drone unit that can go out and get a bunch of shots in a short period of time, and and give you a lot of production value, down to the point where I'll even grab the drone and use it as hold it out the window of a car.
Well, that's
hurry and can't get a shot, and
or
I've done shots like that where we under the pump and it looks great, and I've said, and they're going, I haven't got time to put. I've just said, no, I can pull the blades off. Just held it there, put the thing on my lap, and rolled it.
Exactly.
And got this great, brilliant shot. So
and I mean the Inspire one is you can change lenses on it as well, so you can utilize it as a tracking camera.
It's got its limit. it's got its limitations, but that's a great. And you get good operators, like I love the heli guys, Brendan Isaac. There's some guys, Harpy Creative in Melbourne, the XM2 guys. I haven't worked with everyone, but they've lifted it up, because the early drone people were a bit shit. You got the guys, and they said, I'm the aerial cinematographer, and I'm like, fuck me, stop over operating the shots. I just want Whereas all I do love Guy at Heli Guy, he's got Jeff Gaunt there as well now, who's an unbelievable filmmaker, because he's got a great post-production background as well.
Oh, there you go.
But so that was the thing with the big response to that was that document, but me also wanting to come back from the Kimberleys, feeling that we'd been there and we'd captured capture that feeling that I felt when I was there. And I thought, I
Mm.
don't want to lose that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I have on jobs in the past felt that hasn't happened.
Mm. And I mean, interestingly, like the title itself refers to, obviously a few different things, but just the title at face value, when you say Mystery Road, well, it's this idea of discovering that road and that landscape. So part of the title, it kind of is asking for that in a way. I mean, obviously it's referring to a lot of other things, but to me, even just that is important, that the landscape is part of that story. Like it's
Totally.
and it's capturing about our main hero. Yeah, so Aaron's character was, so that's part of his journey. So I think it's it was important. That's great.
It's a great idea. It's a great character. Like this Indigenous, sort of like focused in character who's this sort of like, but he's a detective,
Yeah.
and but even he wears a gun on his hip, like he's like a cowboy as well. It's not really. There's a part about it that's sort of like mythical, but also if you actually see, sometimes you see police in plain clothes with the thing on their gun, so it's there's a part about that is which is sort of iconic as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah. So anyway, but I hope that answers that, because that's
Yeah.
really what the response was, and right, the sort of world Rachel wanted to create.
Mm. And the other project I really enjoyed that I saw of yours, I actually saw it funny enough, at the Winton Film Festival. Don't Tell. It looked.
Oh,
It
okay.
was such a sort of a moody piece, and I mean what I want to, I guess, talk about it, because the subject matter is quite a dark, and it's based on a true story in a way. So, like, how did you guys, and you're working with a first time feature film director, how did you tackle that approach? How did you stay sensitive to the story and that?
Yeah, well, Tori, again, Tori's got quite different, but Tori has a very visual, she had a very visual style, but she also wanted to um, uh, play with a little bit of magical realism as well in that
Mm.
story, and this is interesting, Peter. Don't Tell came after another project that wasn't from a true story. It was
Okay.
based from a book that I felt like we didn't get right. So I was very determined on Don't Tell.
Yeah.
That I was very focused on Don't Tell was to look, not sort of righting the wrongs, but of doing a truthful story. But doing a truthful story, but also giving it some sort of visual style without it being too stuffy, because we still wanted to have a bit of energy and pace. And they found that fantastic. We were originally going to, and here's, listen, I think, so what we did in Don't Tell is when Tori did her style document and stuff, we were going to shoot 240,
Oh,
right?
yep. Yeah.
But then when we went and looked at all the locations, I said to Tori, I was looking at all the location photos,
Mm.
and something about shooting anamorphic and 240, people don't, you've got to think about it, is what you gain on the width, you lose on the height.
That's
You
right.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? And just the wide angle lenses are so Bowie and all that stuff, that I said to her, I think we should shoot this 185,
Yeah.
because when I actually look at all the building, everything's sort of like, there's a lot of up, and
Yep.
even though there's some nice landscapes, there's a lot of stuff that's particularly that courtroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, and also it'll mean that using spherical lenses, there's some of the limitations. And don't get me wrong, because I actually love using anamorphic lenses for certain things, but I sometimes make decisions based on practical, getting around things practically, and knowing. So in that courtroom, we knew we wanted to shoot sort of very tight on people, or we wanted to be quite wide, because it had this great roof, and they found this building. So what I ended up being is very responsive to what the locations ended up taking up, and then also keeping the lighting very simple, very, very uncomplex, and the color, and so she had some very specific ideas of what she did. Also, we had quite a big heavyweight cast. But the thing is that what was fantastic is once you get Jack Thompson on board, everyone else, he's like, it's like you're having, Jack has so much gravitas, not only as an actor, but as a person. He's the first person on set. He's all dressed. He's all ready to go. There's no, he is a consummate professional. And something he told me that he learned very early on in his career was to always feed the camera. That you always, when you, as an actor, he was always told as a young actor, when I can't remember, I think it was on Waking Fright, or was it one on Friday? What was the film? He said, we work with and the actor always turned to him, now, it's your close-up, now you feed the camera. And I remember he was telling me this, and even Jack, when he'd be doing his off-camera lines and you'd be operating and he'd have his hand behind you and he'd be doing his lines and you'd be listening to him, and his voice is like, it was almost like having warm honey poured over your ear. I mean, seriously, it's like this incredible thing. So, stylistically, we also ended up meeting the actual person who played Sarah West. Sarah West portrayed the girl. We met her growing up.
Oh, wow.
Which is incredible that someone allows that story to be told. It's very sort of brave, really, and so you sort of felt like you had an obligation in another way, that you were not a confidant. You were you've been sort of authorized. You had a lot of there's a lot of responsibility in telling the story without glamorizing or making it too dirty or making it too. And what Tori didn't want to make it titillating at all, but she wanted also there to be a lot of normality in the certain parts of the story as well, like family and things. So I was very proud of Don't Tell as well. That was another 25-day shooting.
Wow.
It wasn't funded by any government funding, going to great the local crew, and we shot mainly in Ipswich, which was very good to us. And then we were in Toowoomba for about a week, I think, and a half. Again, terrific cast, and a great story to tell. And I suppose, where were we sitting with that? I think around the same time, maybe Spotlight was going to come out.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Or maybe Spotlight had come out, but we just sort of thought we wanted to go in a slightly different path.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was an excellent film, but that was more about the journalist telling the story.
It was an investigatory kind of story, and it was very good. But I mean, what I took away from Don't Tell It, which was a nice surprise in a way for Aussie films specifically, that it didn't delve too far into that depressive mode that a lot of Aussie films tend to go, and that's what I liked about it. There was a good dimension and to the family and the characters. We did cover aspects of it, and obviously it's still a very harrowing story to kind of tell, but if you can walk away from a film thinking about it but not be like, oh, life's shit, I think that's it achieved it. So
that's nice. One of the things I found interesting was that the insurance company was such a big part of what the church talked about. Like, they'd have the meetings and the person there, and I'm going, well, when we're doing the scene, and it's like, well, this guy's a representative of the insurance company, and it's like, it really then puts in a head that, at a certain level, it all becomes quite impersonal. There's quite, and I mean, maybe an interesting thing about here, but Tori and I spoke. Well, I sort of brought Tori to the project because I know Scott. I'd worked with Scott's a mate of mine, the producer, and he asked me about directors, and I suggested Tori because I thought she would bring her sort of like, she wanted what Tori and her partner James actually did big rewrites on the script, but Tori wanted very much to and which I love was that scene at the end where the young girl, the older person, the young person were there together.
Yeah.
I thought was a lovely, circular sort of approach to it, and yeah, I mean, we would, there's nothing in it that's too fancy. She said, I don't want, I'll tell you the one rule she said, the camera doesn't move unless the people move.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Okay? That was one little rule she said on this film.
Yeah.
So she said, I don't want to push in on anyone and get the audience to tell the audience how they should be feeling with the camera. I just want them to, I just want the movement in the camera is if people move. Once people stop, the camera stops.
Yes, yeah.
And I said, which there were lots of times where I thought, in those court cases, you could push, smolder in on a moment. Victoria's like, nah, we're just going to let that hang back. So there might have been a bit of restraint in that stuff that you probably saw.
Yeah, and that's
sometimes you get the.
It's important because there's the 2+2 approach. Tell the formula, don't tell the answer to the audience, and there's a beauty in that style of filmmaking because you're letting the audience take in what's happening and they have to kind of figure it out partly of what that character's feeling and not spell it out too much because sometimes, especially with a true story, I think that is the point that we don't get the chance to push in on that person and really listen to what they are saying. So you kind of have to pay attention and go, oh, wait a minute, that person's now lying. You know what I mean? Like in real life, treating it in a way where the audience can experience the story, a little bit less formulaic in the sense of cinema, language, can work really, really well, So I guess there you go. That I didn't pick it up because I've only seen it once, but that must have been part of it.
That was a conscious thing, and it's interesting because it's just been on SBS World Movies, which is interesting because I think SBS, because to me, if I'm anywhere where you can't get internet, that's my little go-to.
Yes,
and I think people, it's probably, I've got to say, it's one of the best resources because I often watch a movie I've got no idea about, like that a Vincent Cassel thing, and I saw a film called was it Public Enemy #1 or something, French film.
Yeah.
And he was like a bank robber with his cops, and it was like but it's interesting that I got an email. I've probably got 3 emails in the last week from people who saw it on SBS on demand and then said, I really love that film and I don't understand why it didn't do better. So, as people weren't filmmakers, they were just people who responded to the photography of the film. And that's very nice when you get that.
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes it's interesting because, I try to not be, I try to treat every film as a new project of script. So I don't always suppose I suppose I've got some of my favourite old tricks I go back to, but I try to, use the lenses. And it's interesting, I'll tell you that. So the lens kit on Don't Tell was, just done a commercial actually with Stephen the week before, and I got the lenses out of Camera Clip, some S4s, and they have a set of S4 Crooks that has a 20 mil. So what I did with that is the lens sizes were like 20, 28. Like I pissed all the normal ones at the 25 so sometimes I'll pull those lenses out of the kit. You know what I mean? So you have to go from here to here.
Yeah.
I'll still always have a zoom, but it'll be just more for drive-bys and stuff like that, where you just kill yourself if you don't do that. But I'm just talking about on the actual coverage. So what I find is, like, one thing, because we shot that spherical, one thing when you shoot anamorphic is you find that you only shoot on 3 lens, because this is the way anamorphic is. And where you put it and, things. So I think we had a 20, a 28, and then we jumped to a 40. And then I went to 65, and then I went to 100. So once you start working in that sort of pattern, then all of a sudden where you put the camera and what you end up getting in the frame, sometimes not having everything's actually good.
Mm.
You choose that. So, that was that lens package, that 20mm, which was great because it was a wide lens, but it wasn't like too bowy,
Mm.
and it wasn't sort of wide, but it still got a lot of stuff in 185,
Yeah, yeah.
Even 28's a really nice lens, and then the 40 sort of like not the 50, but you end up pushing it in, but it gives you a little bit more body language and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the 100 we were using, like when we were in here in the courtroom,
yeah.
we were really. So that was that approach, and then with the lighting, it was just sort of a really color thing, and keeping it pretty simple,
Yeah.
And with the response to those locations, and just keeping sort of making it graphic. And I think it's that thing sometimes, and it's good with Tori, that you can make it, because she's sort of like has that commercial sense. You can talk about a scene and making that scene work without another shot or something, or
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
And I did like the way she did do the little, and she cast that little girl she cast was just so innocent looking, but supposedly that's what she was like, and so you go, at no point does anyone ever go and look at that and go, well, I can see how that happened. It's like, no.
No.
No,
don't go there.
No, there's no sort of excuse for that. No. And the guy killed himself for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole way, the whole thing about the whole story was bizarre. And Aidan brought an interesting thing to it. But I'm watching at the moment Morning Show on Apple TV. Have you watched that?
No, I don't have Apple TV, but yeah, I've seen the trailer for it.
It's free. It's free for a year.
Oh, okay. So, there you go. I'll jump on.
But anyway, it's really interesting because it's funny. It's sort of a bit like because there's the back. I don't know if you know the backstory. The premise of the story. It's a morning show, and there's a host. There's two hosts, and one host gets kicked out for sexual thing, and goes out and it goes through. But it really examines sexual politics from all angles. It's really, really good, and the writing on it is fucking great. And then Steve Carell's amazing. The acting is amazing. And it's fairly straight up the way it's done, but really, really well, nice. It's really like a classic example of like good American television. And but what they do is really interesting. My wife pointed this out last night. Was they're dealing with all this sexual misconduct and that, but they never show any sex.
Oh, good. Yeah.
They never. It never goes into the thing. It's more into the lead up and the retelling and the consequences and fallout. But the part about it that's interesting is the perspective of where you sit in and where women sit and where and I think that when you get to examine those things as and that's the bit I love about my job is I love the fact you get to go a lot of places, but you also get to examine emotions and thinking sometimes about how emotionally things you want to tell a story on the screen and not get in the road of it as well, and not present too much of an artifice.
Yes. Yeah.
So as much as I love Roger Deakins' work, no one can make a film. If Roger Deakins shoots a film, it'll be a director's film, but it's a Roger Deakins film.
Yes.
What I mean?
Yeah.
He probably puts such a big stamp on it.
Yeah. Don't tell him that though.
Don't
tell him that though.
Well, no, I know he's very aware. I think he's very aware of it, and I know that there's been situations where he's been pulled off jobs too. It hasn't all been.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the directors, and I think it's really important. My view is that I really love working with I love being surprised, because when I first went to drama and shows, the first ADs were often people who wanted to be directors. And we'd do the block through for the scene, and they would say to me, how would you shoot it? And I'd say, I'd sort of shoot it, you could do this, you could do that. Like blocking to shoot scenes. If you wanted to do a class, I reckon I could teach directors how to shoot Australian TV drama badly in about an hour.
Yeah.
But they'd still stay employed by Australian producers.
Yes.
The thing I would say to directors is, don't be afraid don't be that. What I'm seeing now with producers and stuff and editing is that what I'm seeing now is the fear is worse than ever. Directors are just covering the shit out of everything and doing and not, whereas Tori very much shot what you wanted to shoot in that film. So that so in saying that, and I encourage it. Anyway, so I'm glad you liked it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And, you bring up a interesting point about this idea of, shooting project with fear being the driving force to, we got to cover it. And, when it comes to lighting, it's too dark or too bright or whatever. It's, and I think that you touched on a little bit earlier about culture, and in a way, the culture of the art of filmmaking, people are starting to start playing way too safe. I think that's a risk people are not willing to, and because the repercussion. But people will say this, that, and this, and and we're not talking about being in your face and that kind of thing. It's more about if you believe in a concept, an idea, and you've got it in your head, you got to push for it. And as a director, Alex Proyas actually mentioned this because I asked about the process of directing and all that. Yes, it's a collaborative process, but the director has to have the vision and be really strong on it. And you do have to have people, the producers, and that be on that train. They can't kind of be like,
totally.
And that's what I'm seeing. I have a minimal experience at this stage in the film industry, but I'm seeing a lot of that, and you read about it, you go, that film, and then you watch the, like I don't know, a good example is the Batman versus Superman. Like, I didn't go see it at the cinemas because I knew that with Zack Snyder, he seems to be always getting screwed when it comes to theatrical releases. And I waited, and I waited until the Blu-ray was released, and with his cut, and it was a good film, but everyone slammed it at the cinema. Well, that's because they ripped the crap out of it, and like he's a very strong visual director, but obviously it's still out of his hands. And this is where the risk factor of like we talked about with Sue Maslin, she's the producer of Dressmaker, and that. That it is becoming like the safety of all those kind of projects, that they have to just make sure that it fits into those categories and everything else, rather than actually just telling a story. And that's young. Like, it's interesting because, like you mentioned about everyone now is just like do whatever, but that's the problem. If you don't have that discipline, you actually have too many options, and you do end up playing safe because you want to make sure that it's all good,
Yeah. A director I've done a lot with, who I really enjoy, with Tony Tills, and he's just done Miss Fisher film.
Oh yes, yep.
He mainly works on Asian now. But Tony always says that, and it's true, that the post-production process, it doesn't matter how risque you sometimes think you're going to be in a scene. By the time you put the right sound in the thing, you grade it, you put it in context. Is it things that you think at the time when you're shooting are so risque and dangerous, but he calls it the blander. Well, the time the blander goes over the top of it, and that's the thing I see.
Yes.
My thing to say to producers is, like Don't Tell wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but I think Tori made a really good film because you made a film that represented how she wanted to tell that story. And I think it's funny sort of way. It's
doing the sense of time. And there's a lot of films that I've seen that I never saw at the cinema. I read reviews of it that said, oh, the film wasn't very good, that I've gone and seen later, Australian films and stuff, and thought, gee, I thought that film was actually okay and pretty interesting and was worthwhile. We tend to get very critical of our film.
Oh yeah,
but I think
that's an Australian thing.
because we don't really let people, you know, we're so critical of thing. And I think one of the mistakes that DPs, young DPs can make is to get too obsessed with the technical.
Yes, yeah.
Like, less is more. And, like, if you haven't got the budget, shoot it on an Arri Mini or fucking whatever, or a fucking, if you've really got no money, and I've done this, just get Alexa Classics, because they'll probably give them to you, you know what I mean?
Yeah. With
a few lenses, you know what I mean? Like what I'm saying, but that camera still can produce a really good result, you know? Like say we were shooting on 5Ds for years. Everyone thought they were the Dutch guts, you know, and you know, limited this and that. But you know, we've got now everyone's into big format. Everyone's shooting big format. Brilliant. When you see it done brilliantly, but when you see it done badly, like just think about the poor focus pullers. I mean, it was hard enough going from 16 mil to 35 mil.
Yes,
you know, I think, and that's one of the problems. I don't think some directors don't understand shooting to format. You know, whereas someone like Tori does, but some other directors still think of shooting 2/3 video. It's like tighter. It's like, well, let's move the camera in and change the perspective, or let's do something else. You know, like I think that's something to really think about with you, you know, where emotionally you want to be. And that's why I find Artemis really good, because it's like you show the director, okay, you want a mid shot. Do you want to be back here on a longer lens, or do I be up close on a wide lens?
Yeah.
And you show them the shots. And they go, oh, no, I like that one. So you know what I mean? Like you got a chance now to A and B it, to have a look. Yeah. So, you know, you're taking some of that unsafety margin out. So, yeah, look, it's like how, you know, when you say, I wish that one of the things I'm trying to do now is not shoot things that I wouldn't watch myself, right? But I have done that because there's been different reasons why working. And, you know, I try to think of three things, like that I like the project and the script, that I enjoy working with the people, you know, like, you know, that you know, because you can't say no to someone who's giving you a lot of work when they say to you, hey, can you come and do this with me? You know, like there's a bit of a thing that I try to also go loyalty as well, because, you know, people, and I think that sometimes that people can be a little bit too ruthless in that world as well. So, you know, and it's times like that, you know, how you're, like, if you want to go and be ambitious and head off to America or somewhere else, then that's fine. But, you know, people have long memories, and sometimes you just be very careful the decisions you make, that you don't burn people along the way, because someone who ultimately, you know, you'll work with someone who will be the assistant, who will be a producer. And I've, you know, in my career, I've seen that so many times, you know, and they've said to me, oh, you were always really nice to me when I was doing that. So, you know, I remember that, you know, so that's what I also think, that we can sometimes get so caught up in our thing and drive and at the moment too, the other thing that's going on, we're driving the rental companies, because everyone wants all the latest stuff and no one's got fucking money for it. And the post houses, and I'll tell you, after all this, it's going to be really interesting. Like, I think we won't have cheap flights anymore. No. We're not going to have, and I think we'll be, you know, there's going to be a lot of shit that will change. Yeah. They'll have to. But I think people are just going to have to be a bit kinder and a bit nicer to everyone, you know, nicer to each other, and just, you know, just think, you know, just have a little bit of empathy, you know.
And yeah, that's definitely part of it. And even from the the filmmaker's point of view, I think this obsession of doing latest tech stuff, I think we need to take it back and become more, you know, like more tactile with what we do, as in, you know, we've got great stuff now. You don't need to keep. Let's work together and let's make some cool stuff. You've got everything you need. Even myself, I've got a couple LED panels. I've got a small tungsten kit, a low pro. I've got a Blackmagic pocket with L lenses. We could shoot whatever. Like, you don't.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So that's what I mean. It's almost back to, you don't need, but it's just funny how I see. It's really interesting, and I can imagine it's only different because I imagine some of the things I used to do. Ronnie Johansson used to just shake his head and go, and so it's not like what we're doing is any different, but I just think there's a point where, that's right. It's all, I mean, you can go and shoot on your iPhone or your thing or whatever. I mean, if you have a look at all the, but we're overall with content. I mean, there's so much of it, so it's interesting. It's really interesting. It's interesting. The whole thing's interesting. I mean, I don't know where. It'd be interesting talking, what we see, where we end up, because people are talking to me about projects and I'm going, I've got no idea. Like, I'm not like, and how we're going to be working, and with what actors. I mean, I don't think anything's going to be the same. I think we're going to have to. We're going to have to eat our lunch differently. We're going to have to work on set differently. I just think, I saw that Commercial Council put out a thing of how they want occupational health and safety on commercial sets because they're still shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, like someone was telling me the other day saying, there might be an interview. Could you shoot an interview with someone? And I said, yeah, sure. I'll just put my iPad on the thing. I'll Skype you in. You can be there asking the questions, and I'll put the camera beside the iPad or whatever. I know we'll make it work.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking. Like I for different things. I don't think. The sad part of it is I don't think it's not all going to snap back exactly how it was.
I think we'll have to work.
Money's going to,
like you said. I think we will have to start be more empathetic towards our fellow humans, and I think that's a really good thing that could come out of it if our collaborative human race decides to go down that path. We have a choice now to do that, and with that comes that this kind of idea of community, working together. So the community of filmmakers start, it's not about competing, and the potential reality is everything stopped, right? So yes, there's a lot of content right now, and people will be watching it for the next 3-4 months, but then there won't be any content. And the comfort that it gives a lot of people, our audiences, that it gives them, and sometimes it's a distraction, but a lot of times it's actually something that helps them get through the day. That's going to be gone. So there will be a level of demand, or there's going to be a shortage, definitely, eventually. There's going to be a little, delay with projects. So that will be interesting as far as filmmakers, that, it will be a case of, well, they started filming, I don't know, Elvis, for example. They might go, what? We're just using only local crew. Yeah, we can't get them, but we have to finish the project. And brings them in.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
I'll be interested to see what happens with that one.
Yeah,
I reckon watch this space. That's going to be very interesting. No, it's going to be really interesting how those projects, and just the money to finance those, like that's, look, Peter, look, it'll all be fine, but it'll just be different.
And
it's going to be different, it's going to be very different, and
and we'll adapt, and that's what we are. We can adapt, and the beauty of being a filmmaker is that we are very prone to adaptability, because we,
totally.
Filmmaking, that's
and the creativity.
Yeah. So that's who we are. We'll finish off on a bit of a higher note. It's been really amazing having you to chat to you for a good amount of time. What's a favourite film or TV show that you just love going back to? That, it doesn't have to...
one that I did or one that
Oh, no,
like?
either or, but just anything you love to watch over and over.
It's interesting because I was talking to my daughter last night about films we love. And we're talking about actors and different things. But, what I do love at the moment, I don't know why, and I don't know whether it's because of my age, but I do like Paolo Sorrentino's Youth.
Oh, yeah.
That film Youth. I don't know if you've seen that with her.
Oh, yeah.
And I do love looking at, again, going to Roger, not only Roger Deakins, but I do love a lot of that imagery in the assassination of Jesse James. That, like, me, from an imagery point of view. I mean, there's films I love because they're just so beautiful to look at, and there's other films I love because they're a great film. And we were talking, we're actually talking last night about having a film nights because I was talking about Gus Van Sant, and we were talking about those films of the generation that defined the generation. I mean. I still think the original Blade Runner is amazing. I mean, the 2021 was incredible too, but you go back to the original, some of those original films from the 70s, and as you say, The Godfather and all that, they still really hold up now.
Oh, yeah. There's timeless films like that. Blade Runner, it will age now with technology, but it's still, it's an amazing piece of work. So.
Incredible, even the way it's shot, and, just the lighting and all that's still relevant. It's not like there's some films that you see and you can see the style of lighting, we're definitely to a much softer, more naturalistic style of lighting with bigger, things now. But even some of those great 80s films that are even a little bit more over the top are still great. I've Dante, I think that there's lots of cinematographers' work I really like. And because I find I'm always sort of surprised by it as well. But I don't know what, if they said what is your penultimate favourite film. It's hard for me to actually put it because some of the TV too that like the latest season of like Ozark, I think has always been really good, even to go back and even look at some of the old X-Files. I did a film in Canada and I worked with the operator who was the focus point on the X-Files, and he started operating on it. And he told me that, I don't know if this story is true, but he told me on the first season of the X-Files that they, the DP rang him and said, we're going to do this series. And he said, do we really want to do a series? This was in Vancouver.
Oh, yeah, back then, yeah.
Oh, look, he said, this will be great. He said, it'll never go. The premise is so stupid, and they want me to light it like really dark. I don't care how dark it is, and it's all about thing. It was the X-Files, and he said it was right. And he said, "Come and do it," because honestly, there's no way it's going to get. There's no way the two characters. There's no way it's going to go past this pilot. So anyway, interesting, and I think that story is very interesting because there's the thing about the bold,
Yes. Yeah,
and they're bold, and that's so I'd say to people that it's sometimes good to go out there and be bold, but at the same time, sometimes if you got, and I was the last director I was working with, I really like, if you were saying of jobs, your favourite jobs for a lot of reasons. I mean, I really enjoyed shooting the last season of Preacher.
Yeah, that was
great.
Yeah.
But that was just great fun. Fun, and I enjoyed all the directors, and I enjoyed the cast, and I enjoyed the showrunner, and all that sort of stuff. It was just, and they would just encourage you to go, oh yeah, that looks great, and just go more over the top.
Just go.
Like, really? Yeah, they're the opposite, because it's Seth Rogen, and they're like, I know them all. But I was talking to this director, and I didn't work with her on Preacher. She was on Preacher, but she was on. I was with her on Clickbait before they shut us down. Called Laura Belsey. She's an American director and fantastic. But we're sometimes saying, sometimes when you get two good actors on a really good dialogue scene, sometimes you don't want to get in the road of that. And
Yeah.
And if you have, as a compromise or whatever, but if sometimes you're just going to put two cameras, one on one and one on the other, and just let them go.
Yeah.
You sometimes, what you lose in the control of the image and the compromise, you'll make up with this incredible performance. And, you know, so that's the trade-off sometimes where you've got to go, do I fight for this certain thing, or does the director fight for his performance? And there, you know, and that's where sometimes the great art of compromise, which the whole filmmaking thing is something you've got to take into consideration, you know?
Yeah, that's a great little takeaway, really, because for a cinematographer, it's like we read the script and you do have to be like, you know, say, okay, in this moment, let the camera just be there and capture these people, because I can read the dialogue and I know this scene's way too.
You don't need to get in the road. You don't need to get in the road of it, and you know, a bit like what I said with don't put any artifice on it. You know?
Yeah. So that's a wonderful little takeaway. Well, that was awesome that you shared so much, and maybe we do a little follow up after all this is over to see where we're at. That could be interesting.
Will it be interesting because I could either have gone back and finished Clickbait, and I would have had Drover's Wife will be, I don't know when it'll come out because there's no film festival. So, I mean, you know, so it's going to be really interesting in 6 months' time to see where we are. So what are we saying now? We're in April, mid-April. So what, 6 months is what, October, is it?
Yeah, around there.
I don't think it'll be 6 months. I reckon because we've effectively just done a month, haven't we?
Yes, so they are potentially saying end of May we might be reducing the restrictions.
Well, I say by the end of May, okay, but nothing with. I don't think anything will start up. Talking about starting up until June.
Yeah.
So if we're shooting in July or August, fantastic.
Yeah.
It worries me when they talk about a peak in August or September. That worried me because I just thought, it's a long time.
Thanks very much for coming on, and really look forward to hopefully seeing your projects finished, and then seeing them on Netflix with Clickbait and The Drover's Wife. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Peter. With pleasure.
Well, that was wonderful having Mark on, and hopefully you've got lots out of it with his lot of insights into working in the Australian film industry as a DP, and also some ideas and visual styles that he discussed on his films. In the next episode, I talked to Nicholas McCullum, who's a production designer working in Australia. He's worked on such films as James Cameron's Sanctum 3D, Bait 3D, Kokoda, and many other feature films. It'd be interesting to hear his long-lasting career in the film industry and talking about designing. Talk to you next week.